Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing Allan Piper. Allan, how you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm very happy to be here.
I am very happy to have you, especially in that amazing shirt that you are wearing. That was the first when we first started this. I was like, that may be the dopest shirt I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, before Allan, we talk about the reason that you are here. I want the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. Allan is the director of eVil Sublet, a horror comedy about a New York couple who knowingly move into a haunted apartment because the rent is cheap. Now, something I got to say real quick, that's genius. I love the fact that it's like, you know what, it's haunted, but we're going to save a couple pennies. What gave you the idea for that?
Well, anyone who lives in New York knows that there is no perfect place. Finding the perfect place is a trade-off. So this was my writing partner and I have actually never lived in New York at the same time, but we've each lived in New York at various times. So we came up with this idea a number of years ago, and I live with my wife in an apartment where actual strange events do happen quite frequently. She's been awakened by a cold hand grabbing her foot in the night, or a voice calling her name, or saying, "Move." We've had doors fly open and closed on their own. But we wouldn't dream of leaving because we've got a place big enough to shoot a horror movie, and we can actually afford it. And in New York, you live with those trade-offs. So the inspiration comes from a variety of things, some of which from things that have happened in our own apartment. And actually, a few of the strange things that have happened in our apartment, we've managed to capture and include in the movie, along with the fictional things. Well, by the way, this is my first. eVil Sublet has not yet premiered. We made it with the support of very generous people who contributed via Seed and Spark. Many with the offer that if you contributed at a certain level, we would take your face and hide it somewhere in the shadows as a ghost in the apartment. That's awesome. So we've got something like 200 ghost faces hidden in the apartment, but we're looking to. I can't yet discuss when and where we'll be premiering, but I will be able to make announcements about that soon. But this is actually my first time doing a live interview about this, so I'm very thrilled that it is with you and with Sledgehammer Horror.
Me too, man. One thing I got to say real quick before I lose my train of thought on it. I love the fact that you're like, my wife has like a cold hand wake her up, and you, instead of being like, you wake up and you're like, cold hand waking you up, you say, let me write this down. That's great. And the fact that, you like you said, this is the first time you're actually talking about this in real time, it means a lot, because you have Sally Struthers making her full-length horror debut in this film. The amazing Jennifer Lee Houston is in this film.
That is my wife.
Yeah, and it's amazing that we have these beautiful people that are making this film together, and the fact that it's your third feature debut, or your third feature movie. Obviously, Your third feature debut is a oxymoron, but your third feature movie. And do you think that as you go on, especially you being behind the camera, being the writer, being the director, do you feel like the more you do, the more you hone your own craft, like you learn things from your first and second feature that you come into this one already knowing, and you're ready to buckle down and be a little bit more stern on those type of things with your third feature?
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. I think I love each of the features for different reasons. This is definitely, I think this has the highest production value of the three. And also in this one, I really tried to throw everything that I love into it, because it's tricky to be an independent filmmaker. So I'm making independent films at roughly once a decade, and so I'm thinking, you know what? I don't want to hold back at all with this one. I want to put everything that I love into this. So we have scenes that we filmed in Coney Island on the Wonder Wheel. As it turned out, we were actually filming on the Wonder Wheel the same day that Jennifer Lopez was filming on the Wonder Wheel for her recent romantic comedy with the Marry Me is the title of that movie. And so we've got scenes in Coney Island. We have a creepy ventriloquist doll that the amazing ventriloquist artist turned nature photographer Carla Rhodes brought into the film. We have sword swallowing. We have I tried to pack this with everything that I love, and that includes my wife Jennifer Lee Houston and Sally Struthers, who was just an absolute dream to work with. And I want this movie to be a success, and I want her to love the movie just so that I can do more projects with her, because she's so good. I want to say something about her performance. So this is a horror comedy. Yeah. It's Sally Struthers' first horror movie, and she's playing. I don't want to give away anything about the role, but she's playing a role where she's called upon to sort of come across in a few different ways. And one of the things is that she gives just the most heartrending monologue at a moment when in the movie, when I think we are not expecting something poignant, she makes it so poignant, and it's her brilliance as an actor that I teared up on set hearing her deliver this monologue moments before and after, just having to restrain my own laughter so that I wouldn't ruin the take because of something hilarious that she did.
And it's amazing how timing, and I think that's why horror and comedy go together so well.
Yes.
Because of timing. If you don't have the right timing with horror, your scares don't work. If you don't have the right timing in comedy, your jokes don't land. And to be able to sandwich those together with a little bit of drama right in the middle of it, perfect. If you want to know how to make the perfect horror comedy, watch a movie like Shaun of the Dead. You don't have to be a parody, but when you can make people genuinely laugh, genuinely scared, and genuinely feel something all at the same time, it's an amazing feeling. And I cannot wait for this to be out and available for viewing. And the best thing you guys can do, because I know that you want to see it, all you got to do is follow all the social media links I have down here in the description. I have all of Allan's social media links. That way you can stay up to date on everything that he's doing and all the release information about the show. So, a little bit more besides eVil Sublet, you also produced and directed the George Takei narrated documentary Married and Counting. Now, obviously, George Takei very, very open about his sexuality. It's something that we've all known for a very long time. And Married and Counting tells the story of two men in pre-marriage equality America who traveled the country to get married in every state that would let them. So something that's very, very important, especially now in the country that we live in, where it seems like sometimes we're taking big steps backwards. What was it like to be a part of a movie like this?
I see. Yes, that movie holds such a special place in my heart, and that movie is what makes it hard for me to say that I like each movie I make more, because Married and Counting is so special. So what happened with Married and Counting? Two men that I know, that I came to know through my wife, that I didn't actually know all that well at the time that we started making the movie, but who since have become my dearest, closest friends, and who are in eVil Sublet.
Yes.
Stephen Mosher and Pat Dwyer had been a couple for getting close to 25 years. And they've been living in New York for a lot of that. They met in Texas in college. And as they were approaching their 25th anniversary as a couple, which was going to arrive in 2011, a number of states had begun to legalize same-sex marriage. And so they assumed that living in New York, which is supposedly the most progressive state in the nation, I think we can say definitively right now that under Governor Newsom, California is the most progressive state in the nation. We could have a whole other conversation about that. But they were assuming that if Iowa had marriage equality, surely by 2011, New York would have marriage equality. So they started planning a big wedding to celebrate, to get married on their 25th anniversary as a couple. As they got closer to that date, it became clear that New York was not going to have marriage equality. And so they eloped in Connecticut, which is one of the places where they could get married, but somehow that didn't feel very fulfilling. And they decided that they would get as married as the United States of America would allow them to be, which meant going to each of the states, which was only a few, each of the states that allowed two men to marry, get marriage licenses in each one and get married there. And so obviously this was a statement to each other of their commitment and their love, but it was also a political statement about the unequal treatment that they were receiving. And so political statements are best made publicly, and they approached me to document their journey as a filmmaker, and I was just honored to be entrusted with their story. I like to think of the movie as a real life romantic comedy, because they are hilarious. They are just funny people, but their love is so beautiful, so that even though this is a documentary, unscripted, just following them through their lives, in a lot of ways it feels like a road trip romantic comedy. And what was one of the amazing things as we were making the movie was that it was at a time of great shift. So in the movie, I captured the moment where they first heard that then Governor Cuomo was going to make a big push for marriage equality in New York, and the effort to pass marriage equality had failed in the previous attempts. And I captured the moment where Pat, one of the two men, was reading the news report about, oh, the governor says we're going to get this passed, and he says, oh, it's a nice gesture, but I know it's not going to happen. And then about a year later, I was with him and his husband as they were watching the vote unfold on television, and as they were watching New York pass marriage equality. So we had a surprise ending for the movie, because it was going to end. Their final wedding was going to be on the steps of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. allowed marriage equality. So after we had finished shooting the movie officially, there was this new development, and so now the movie, so we ended up shooting an extra scene for the movie, which was their wedding in Coney Island under the Wonder Wheel in New York, when marriage equality was legal in New York. And then the final thing that happened, after we finished shooting the movie, I was working on President Obama's video team for the 2012 election, and it was during the campaign. I think Joe Biden deserves a lot of the credit. He spoke out of turn and kind of forced the president to take a position. And it was at that time that President Obama, who had, when he had first run for office, said, no, marriage is between a man and a woman, but I support civil unions. He announced that he had changed his position, and that it didn't make sense for some Americans to be treated differently than others, and he endorsed his support for marriage equality. And that really highlights the power of the presidency to shift the national debate, because there were no laws. The president doesn't have the power to change the law by saying that. But when he said that, it really pushed what had been not a mainstream position even a few years earlier into the solid mainstream. And in that election, the first popular public referenda passing marriage equality passed in two states after the president had come out, and state after state after state followed. And then fortunately, it was only a brief time after that the individual state laws didn't matter anymore, because the Supreme Court struck down the Defense of Marriage Act with the Obergefell decision, which unfortunately the new hard right Supreme Court has specifically said that they are looking to revisit. Anyway, so that's the long answer for what it was like to make that movie. Right. But how that ties into eVil, Sublet, and horror is that eVil Sublet, I wrote it largely for people that I knew that I wanted to see on screen, and
Yeah.
having made a movie, a a documentary, an unscripted movie with Stephen Mosher and Pat Dwyer, I just knew how magnetic and how exciting they were to watch on camera together, and so I wrote parts for them in eVil Sublet, major parts. And this is their first time. It's not their first time appearing on the big screen together, obviously, but it is their first time appearing on screen acting together.
Acting.
Yes.
Big difference.
Yes.
Well, I just want to say, I really don't put my political views out there very often because being an influencer, obviously, I don't want to try to influence anybody else's stance on anything, but I don't care if I influence or not on this subject because love is love. And,
Yes.
you know, anybody that is in love deserves the right to be able to put a ring on their finger and say, this is the person I'm connected to until I go to the grave. And to argue against that to me just shows hate. That's all it shows me is I don't like this. So I want to hurt that person. And I don't think that's fair. I think that as long as you're in love and if you want to be able to show your love to your partner, you should be 100% be able to do that. It's very special to know that I am an ordained minister. I performed the wedding of my mother-in-law to her wife. My mother-in-law at the age of 50 found the person that she was meant to be with for the rest of her life, and it's a female. And I literally cried watching them both walk down the aisle, and I had to hold it together to perform the wedding for them. And it was just one of the most beautiful things. I could never have asked to be part of anything more special than to watch my mother crying, knowing that she's going to be marrying the person that she is supposed to be with, and it's another female. Love is love, period. And if you try to interfere in that, I think it says a lot more about you than the people that are fighting for the rights to get married. So that's all I'm going to say on that subject. So let's go from a real life horror story to a cult comedy, Starving Artist, real quick. The Boston Globe has called this one of the best films you've probably never seen. Now, for those of you that are watching that have probably never seen it, Allan, what can you tell us a little bit about Starving Artist and where they can see this movie at?
There's nowhere to see it right now, but you know what? Now I'm gonna try to change that. So, Starving Artist, I made that right after college. I made that in 1997, and it is a zany comedy about a bunch of starving artists living in Boston, and one of the actors in Starving Artists, John DeVore, is in eVil Sublet. And well, I guess two are, because I played a role in Starving Artists and in eVil Sublet. Yeah. Yeah, so that was in the 1990s, different time in terms of indie film. So it showed at a lot of film festivals, and it did have a limited theatrical run, but we didn't have streaming services back then. Sure. So it never yeah, so I should try to get it on a streaming service now. Who knows? Maybe if the response is strong enough to eVil Sublet, maybe people will want to see what was Allan Piper's first movie like, and then we'll get it online for folks to see somewhere.
And the best way to find out if that's going to happen, guys, is to follow Allan on social media. And those links are down here in the description. So I said it again, but you guys got to make sure you're following him, because you want to be able to stay up to date, not only on when you can see eVil Sublet, but hopefully we'll get a chance to watch Starving Artist as well. So eVil Sublet, it is a horror comedy. But in order to create horror in some type of aspect, horror had to start for you somewhere, Allan. So I would like to go back to the past now and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Allan, the first horror movie you watched was?
The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. Classic.
Universally revered as the best remake in all of horror. And I'm going to go as far as to say one of the most underrated scores I've ever seen in any film ever. People talk about the practical effects, the acting, the story, which they should. All those things in The Thing are amazing, but nobody talks about the score because of how great everything else is in this film. So do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it, Allan?
So I must have been, I don't remember the exact year, but I'm guessing, sorry. So I saw it, I must have been 9 years old. Really too young for a movie that intense. So I saw it. Oh, great environment to see a horror movie. I saw it deep in the woods in a basement. It was uh, friends' parents were throwing a New Year's Eve party that they threw every year, and they always tried to come up with something for the kids to do in the basement while the adults had their New Year's Eve party. And the VCR was a pretty new thing. In fact, I think this was the first year that that family had a VCR, and I'm guessing it probably so the thing came out in 82, so it probably wouldn't have been 82 because it used to take a long time for things
long time.
But I'm guessing it was probably New Year's Eve 1983 going into 1984, and it was always this long. They lived out in the middle of the woods. It seemed much darker and stranger and further off as a little kid than it probably was. So it was always this long, dark winter's night trip to get out there. And then we go down. Then, I'm one of the kids sent down to the basement, but I was one of the youngest kids at this party. The other kids were maybe more age appropriate to this movie, although, I mean, I don't know. It's a really intense movie. I had never seen, I had up until that point, the most terrifying horror movie I'd seen was Sleeping Beauty, which when you're a little kid in the theater, that's an actual horror movie. I mean, you got a witch, who turns into the moment she turns into a dragon on a giant that gave me a nightmare. So that had been the scariest thing I'd seen up till then. But then I get introduced to The Thing, the amazing special creature effects by Rob Bottin. The Thing, which is it's very hard for films to. There's something to be said for highly suspenseful films and highly gory films. It's usually a choice between the two, a trade-off, but this is one that really succeeds at both. And when I saw that, I was so scared. I was so scared to see it because, I mean, I knew it was an adult horror movie. I knew it was R-rated. I knew it was going to be scarier than Doctor Who, which had me, hiding behind the couch. I knew this was going to be scarier than that, and it was everything I was afraid it was going to be. Although that's the thing, is that that I think is when you have my first horror movie experience. Yes, it was absolutely as terrifying and disgusting as I thought it was going to be. But what I wasn't expecting is that I liked it, and I found it exciting, and I found it thrilling, and I wanted to see more things like that. Maybe not right that moment, maybe let's get some daylight first. But so that was it. I mean, it's a wonderful thing when you discover, and that's to me, I think that's really the beauty of horror, is it allows you to confront your own fears in a more safe way than you might otherwise get.
Right. And something I've always said, because everybody, if you're watching this for the first time and you don't know who I am as a human being, I don't in any way condone drug use. It's not who I am as a human being. But watching your first horror movie is like doing your first drug, and then you're constantly chasing that dragon again, trying to get that feeling again. And I think that I agree with you. Like, once you have it, you want it. You want it more and more and more. And that's why I love to talk about this exact subject, because that's what got a lot of us started in the path that we are on today. And The Thing is a very effective movie with a lot of very effective scenery throughout. But which scene would you say it was that affected you the most?
Well, it's the one that has stuck with me the most over the years, and the one that I remember and this was the one that really nailed most that balance between suspense and gore. Close second would be the one where the head turns into the spider and runs away. I mean, that is an extraordinary moment. But it is it's the moment where Kurt Russell has everyone tied up. They're going to all test their own blood, and they've come to the conclusion that this is, I don't know, should we be issuing spoiler alerts? If you have not seen The Thing, all right, I'm gonna issue it. If you have not seen The Thing and you are watching this now, stop watching this. Don't watch this video until you've seen that, because this scene, the way it plays out is.
And if you haven't seen The Thing by now, you should be watching it for yourself anyway.
Yeah,
I said at the beginning, this is universally revered as one of the best horror remakes of all time. I have a lot of very, very good friends and a lot of very good people that are in the horror community, the horror genre. This is their favorite horror movie. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that this is their favorite. This is a very well-loved movie. If you haven't seen The Thing, or just go watch it. Not the 2011 one, the original 1982 one. Make sure you're checking it out. You will not regret it.
So there's this moment where Kurt Russell's character has everyone tied up. So they know that someone there is the Thing. And that right there, that is so deeply psychologically terrifying. The idea that you're in a room of people, they're all your closest friends, but one of them is not actually your friend. He's just wearing your friend's face, and you can't know. There is just something so deeply psychologically troubling about that. And it sort of goes back to the old myths of the doppelganger. And Otto Rank, the psychoanalyst, wrote an essay in 1914 about why we're so scared of the idea of the doppelganger. So you have the doppelganger element there, that there's somebody there who's just wearing a face, and you don't know who it is. But because this is a thing with an infection, you assume it's not the Kurt Russell character, but maybe he doesn't even actually know.
Exactly.
The person who it is might know and might not know. So there's that horrifying thing. Like, what if I'm there and I find out it's me? Now you have, from the suspense angle, you know that something big is going to happen.
Yes,
definitely. So they're going. So they've decided. They've come to the conclusion. They figured out that the Thing. It is this. I'm assuming everybody knows the premise here. If you don't know the premise, you shouldn't be watching. So I'm not going to explain the whole premise. But they know that if they put a hot wire into the blood will react as a whole creature. Now we have just seen a fiercely gory scene, the one that I mentioned with like the head and the spider and the thing. So we know that whatever is going to happen, it's going to be intense. So if you're the 9-year-old kid like me watching this, it's like we know something really awful is about to. I'm going to see something that I'm not sure I want to see.
How do you follow up the spider head?
Exactly. And so then they're going to test each person one by one. So you know that all hell is going to break loose when the thing happens. So you have this long drawn out suspense. And the other thing that you know, so everyone's tied up, and they have to be tied up because one of them is the Thing. But that means everybody else who is not the Thing is tied up and is tied to the Thing. They are tied to the Thing. How much worse could it be?
Right.
It seems like, so not bad enough that I'm tied up. I'm tied up to the thing that I'm scared of. And so then you have this moment. So then you have the long drawn out suspense, and the suspense is so beautifully drawn out. And then you have this payoff with that where they have the blood thing, and there's explosion, and the Thing, the one of them who's tied up, who is the Thing, things out, and they're still tied to him, and it is gory and it is disgusting, but it is. And this is the thing that blows my mind, because usually you have either gore or suspense, or sometimes you can have suspense leading up to gore, and the gore is the end of the suspense. But here you have continued suspense during the gore, because you have the people who are tied. Like, you have there's still this unknown.
They're struggling.
Yes.
They're looking and struggling.
And then you have Kurt Russell struggling with his flamethrower, which isn't working. So you have the moment that in any other director's hands, I think, would have been payoff, is continued. It's simultaneous payoff to one suspension, but creation of new suspension. And so that scene, yeah, that scene had the biggest, like, I think I had marks because I was digging my
Yeah.
fingernails into my arms. I think I had marks on my arms the next day after watching that. So yeah, so that's the scene that haunts me most from that movie.
Well, and that part had the thing in general, like these two scenes that we were just talking about. You have the head spider, which
Yeah.
was completely homaged in It Chapter 2 with Stanley's head. You know, when
Hmm.
they open the fridge and Stanley's head pops out and the spider legs come out of it.
Yeah.
You know, we were in the movie theater watching it, and I was like, "Oh, I look like Leonardo DiCaprio." I was like, "That's from The Thing. I know that." Um, and then the blood test scene has been homaged in movies, and it even been parodied in South Park. You have an episode of South Park where Cartman has the thing, and you know, like it's that's how important this movie is in cinema history. And not only does it have a lot of effective scenery, there's a lot of great scenery throughout the film
Hmm.
as well. So, which scene in the film would you say is your favorite scene?
Well, I think that's my favorite scene because it's so impactful. It's so I mean it's so it affects you on so many levels. I really, yeah, that's my favorite scene. I do love the spider head scene. I mean, that is great too. And I love the final scene because we've established if you haven't seen the movie, you should not be watching at this point. So I don't feel bad
Right.
talking about it. I'm a sucker for self-sacrifice. I think that the people laying down their lives for the greater good is the most noble thing that people can do, and so that's powerful as well.
Yeah. And we've talked about also, you know, with The Thing, it is a remake on its own. It
Yes.
did get a prequel, a surprise prequel in 2011, but obviously remakes, requel, sequels, it's still all the rage in Hollywood and it always will be. I think that The Thing prequel failed because of the overuse of CGI when the original Thing is so known for its practical effects. Would you like to see them take another swing at this movie today again with another remake, requel, sequel? Or are you kind of in the let's let a sleeping dog lie and leave it alone type thing?
You know, I I sort of feel like when I don't know. I don't ever want to poo poo. I don't ever want to poo poo remakes. I don't want to be part of. I, I don't know that it needs to be remade because I think it does. I think it works so well on its own. But I mean, if you were going to say, "Oh, don't remake things," then that movie wouldn't exist in the first place.
Exactly.
So I can't be opposed to the idea of remaking it. But yeah, I do think the practical effects in that movie, the creature effects were just so extraordinary. I
Yeah.
mean, really, and they hold up. I mean, you watch that, and there is now the CGI effects have gotten much better than they were a few years ago. Uh, but I still think there's a certain gravity, a literal gravity to stuff that physically exists that
Hmm.
maybe for reasons we don't fully understand, uh like maybe we don't know how we're perceiving the difference, but I think we sort of do perceive the difference still,
Yeah.
between things that are physically there and things that are not physically there. I know Rob Bottin also did the makeup effects for RoboCop, which was I believe the first R-rated movie I saw in a theater, and I was not ready for that either. That film the violence and gore in that film absolutely traumatized me at the time. But it's a testament to his art as as an effects creator. Yeah, and I don't know. We did in eVil Sublet. Pretty much all of our effects are, you know, using our most advanced effects are like early 1900s technology. There's not really there's, there's not much in the way of digital for us. I think
Good.
that practical effects are very compelling.
I've always said, let practical effects be your mashed potatoes. Let CGI be your salt and pepper. You know, use a little bit of it to spice it up a little bit, but stay practical for your dinner and use your CGI as your seasoning, because a bad CGI movie ages a whole lot worse than a bad practical movie.
Yeah.
A whole lot worse.
I had the privilege on a short film, I guess, quite some time ago called Roommate from Hell, of working with Gabe Bartalos, just a legendary special makeup effects artist. And he going to his studio was just such a thrill, because you are surrounded by so much, so many strange and twisted and magnificent things. And also, he's just the nicest guy in the world. But I feel like most horror people are the nicest people, because they get all their darkness out in their art.
Yep.
And then they're just sweetie pies after that.
It's a family, man.
Yeah.
Horror is everybody. I mean, obviously you have your gatekeepers and bullshit artists everywhere, but overall in the horror world, I feel like everybody is just so into it and they want everybody else to succeed. Like, we all grew up in it, you know, me and you are around the same age. We grew up at a time where if you liked horror in March, April, May, you were fucking weird. You know, horror was October, that's it, you know. And then we obviously got movies like Scream that came out and really popularized the genre and made it cool to like it all the time, which awesome. But I think growing up like that, being a freak because you liked horror movies, it really does humble you to when you are meeting other people that are into it, because you know that they felt the same way. We were all the weirdos at one point, and now we are able to communicate with each other through this beautiful thing called the internet. And you know, we can do these things and respect and love each other so much. I mean, we have cons where people, you know, you don't get rom-com con. You're not going to have people dressing up like Jennifer Lopez from Marry Me and going on the wheel. You know, that's not going to happen. But, you know, you get horror cons where people are just there to love the culture and appreciate each other. And that's a great segue to my next question. We talked about some of the amazing things you've done. We've talked about your first horror movie. But now, Allan, my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Allan? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
It is, well, as I think you'll agree, it's not really a fair question, because it's like I don't there are so many that I love. I do see, this is bad, because I watched your last episode and this was the choice. I do think probably if I had to pick one, I think I'd probably say The Shining. And I have torn loyalty saying that, because Stephen King is just so much my hero, and I've had the privilege of interviewing him for Now This, and I was the senior politics producer for Now This for a number of years. I interviewed just about everyone who ran for president in 2020. And the only person, so, you know, I interviewed Joe Biden, I interviewed Kamala Harris, I interviewed Nancy Pelosi, but the only person I've really been starstruck and tongue-tied around was Stephen King. And the fact of the matter is, again, tying into the whole horror people are nice people, he's one of the nicest people that I've ever interviewed. And it was pouring rain and he wouldn't even take my umbrella, because he said, "Oh, I don't want you to get wet." Anyway, so I'm a little bit torn, because I know that he's not the biggest fan of the Kubrick film. And so that makes me torn, because I want to have loyalty to King. But I think the film is one of the weirdest, scariest things that's ever been committed to cinema. And even though it doesn't follow all of the plot points of the book, I think it captures so much of the feeling of the book. It's definitely a film that there are multiple homages to in eVil Sublet.
That's amazing. And gosh, how do I word it the right way? Because I agree with you, because I felt that way. Everybody that knows me knows Child's Play is my favorite horror franchise. And going into the remake, I didn't even go watch the remake in cinema because of Don Mancini. I have this, connection to Don, and he's been somebody that I've idolized for a very long time. And then I finally watched it. I'm like, damn, this movie's really good. Like, and I don't want it to be because of Don. So I understand what you're saying. And with The Shining, you hear about all the things that Kubrick did on set, the way that everybody treated Shelley and, how unhinged Jack was. And it really comes out in the film, like the dedication that they all put into it. And I do respect the fact they didn't follow the book note by note because we've already read the book. Give me something a little bit different.
Well,
But
and
I
also,
understand what you're.
yeah, in 19, I'm not even sure now how well with present day CGI you could pull off the topiary situation. You certainly could not have done it effectively in 1980, and I do think that replacing the topiary animals with a topiary maze was a good way to reference the source material without doing something that with the technology that existed at the time just could not have honored the book with moving topiary animals in the time of the movie.
Have you seen King's made-for-TV version?
I actually have not.
They do it, and the CGI, it does not look good. And again, I respect Stephen King as much as you do. That guy, without Stephen King, this wouldn't be happening right now. I can say that with 100% certainty, 100% facts. I wouldn't be sitting here right now without Stephen King. But there were definitely times where it was like, you gotta let this one go, like Maximum Overdrive, and then you get, the made-for-TV Shining. Yeah, look at that.
I'm constantly surrounded by Stephen King books. That's
amazing.
I think he's
one of my all-time favorite movies is the Stephen King deep cut that not a lot of people have even seen. It was a made-for-TV film called Sometimes They Come Back. And that, to this day, is in my top 3 favorite horror films of all time. Like, it's scary. It's funny. I hate to say it because I sound old, but it's hip. You got younger kids that are doing cool shit in the movie. I absolutely love Sometimes They Come Back. And it scared me. I just transferred up from Milford. Like, that movie scared the shit out of me as a kid. So I definitely get the love for King and the deep cuts that he does. So, Allan, I've had an amazing time talking to you about some of the things that you've done, your first and favorite horror movies. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to The Thing, and we're going to rank this on a skull count. Now, just like always, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not going to be critics because obviously it'd get a bunch of 5s. But what we're going to do here is judge this movie strictly on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Allan, what would your ranking of John Carpenter's The Thing be?
Oh, 5. It's just the impact it had. The impact it had on me, just extraordinary. And rewatching it holds up. The only thing that I think is a missed opportunity in the movie, something that Carpenter got wrong, is and it doesn't spoil things, particularly because it all happens in such a short period of time. But he has the sun come up and down every day.
Yeah.
But in the Antarctic, you get 6 months of night and 6 months of day. And the first short film I ever made was an interview with an Antarctic explorer who went to the Antarctic in 1933 with Admiral Byrd. And he talked about how the psychological effects of having 6 months of night where it's just utterly claustrophobic, and you get the seasonal affective disorder. And this is a guy, very kind-hearted guy, who talked about how he contemplated murdering one of his closest friends over the way he chewed his food. And then you have this manic 6 months of day where you sleep in broad daylight. It never sets. So anyway, I think that the movie could have been even more claustrophobic and psychologically affecting.
Just night.
If it was just you could have it start like the first scene, like with the helicopter. You have it like you're almost at night. Like we're in because the sun doesn't go up and down. It goes over a 6 month period. It spirals lower and lower, and then it gets anyway. So that's the only I think it's a missed opportunity. And having then met an actual Antarctic explorer, it's like now whenever I watch anything set in either the Arctic or the Antarctic, And I know it's really hard to denote, you know, it's as a filmmaker, the easiest way to denote the passage of time is, oh, it's day, oh,
It's
it's
day,
night. Now
not
you
yeah.
know, yes, but that's part of what makes the Antarctic freaky, is that there is no, you lose control of time. Anyway, that was a deviation from your question. Was the effectiveness. Five Skulls utterly shook me to my core as a child and still as an adult. I think incredibly powerful.
And I absolutely love that answer. And I never even thought of that, but that would make it so much scarier to just have it be night the whole time, you know,
Yeah. Well,
and you don't have to explain it.
Yeah. Most of the film, I mean, because of the speed with which the thing infects, most of it happens over the course of one night anyway. So it isn't there's not much of a missed opportunity, but a little bit of a missed opportunity, because you do sort of get, it gives you a sense of relief when, like, when they go and they find the wreckage of the ship.
Yeah.
Imagine doing that at night with like
Trying to
torches. Yeah. It's and the way torches look out in the cold. I had this documentary that I made, my first short film documentary. I got footage from the National Archives from that expedition, and you know, they're shooting with film cameras, and the way when it's that cold, the way the steam circles a torch. Yeah, it's just it's just the weirdest looking thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, so little slight missed opportunity there, but not worth doing a remake just for that.
But if they do,
they got to make it all at night, all no daylight. Yes.
Man, Allan, I really have had an amazing time with you, but guys, we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before it happens, I do want to remind you one last time that all the social media links are down in the description. So make sure you're following Allan to stay up to date on all the films he has coming out, not just eVil Sublet, but he's going to be doing more in the future. This is just still the beginning. So make sure you're following him on social media to stay up to date on everything. Until next time, guys, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.